everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Will come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to this week's weekly recap, which is the first of the true off-season episodes where we're not covering any sport that is currently ongoing. It's a very strange feeling, but this one is largely going to be filled with football recruiting news because it's been a big week for K-State in the way of commits. But before we get started with the episode, I do want to thank the sponsor of the show, and that is Greg Arthur. If you want to have your name read out at the beginning of every single episode, please be sure to check out the official supporters link in our podcast and Twitter bios. And you may want to, you don't have to. It's going to be free content for everyone. But we have a few guests lined up for these next few weeks that you won't want to miss. And we also may be doing a brand new type of episode, which, depending on how it goes, may run into the season, or it might just be an off-season thing. And the 7 people that know what that is are probably very excited.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but no, we've got some fun stuff on the horizon for this summer. It's a little shorter, I guess, dead period than normal, because it's only going to be probably about it's less than 2 months, I think, before soccer starts having regulation contests. So
I think it's 5-6 weeks, I think it is. But even then, we still cover stuff before the season. We still have to do our football season preview. That's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about the brand new commits for K-State, of which there are 4. And the first one of them is Sawyer Schilke. Schilke is what I'm going to go with. It could be Shilk, but I'm going to go with Schilke. And he is out of Nebraska Kearney. He's listed as an edge, not the high school, not the university, because, yes, that is technically an important distinction. But he's listed as an edge on his On3 page. He's probably going to end up playing Sam linebacker at K-State, if I had to guess. He probably moves to some kind of linebacker. But in terms of Sawyer, what do you have for him, Connor? What do you think of him?
He's a very dynamic athlete. I do agree with you. I don't think he'll be a primary edge rusher. I saw him as either a Sam or a Will because I think he has really great explosiveness, which is a great quality for an edge rusher. But I think his build lends itself more to being a linebacker, someone that can situationally pass rush if we need them to, which, of course, leads you back to the versatility of the Sam backer. But he also does have some pretty quality instincts as a linebacker, which maybe he ends up as a Will. I don't think he'll be a Mike, but it's really I'm not very good at projecting linebackers.
Neither am I.
Yeah, unless it's just painfully obvious. But even then, I'm not the best at it. But he's a really powerful athlete, and he's yet another one of these commits where you look at them and you're like, why isn't this guy, maybe more highly thought of? He was actually a flip from Northern Illinois, and some of his film, he is pretty interesting off the edge. He has a decent use of his hands. Just doesn't have the longest arms in the world, which I think is going to be the one thing that holds him back from being a true edge rusher. But I think the big thing with him is he has an explosive athletic profile that we think that we can do something with, which I think that's the core of a lot of these camp offers is they have some traits that we really, really like, and we just want to see if we can mold them into a really great player.
Yeah, and I think a pretty good comp, and we almost always come up with very recent comps because it's what's on people's mind. But I think a pretty decent comp for Sawyer is probably going to be Daniel Green, but at a different linebacking position, because Daniel Green had one thing down in spades, and he had excellent run defending instincts, and he knew how to defend the run. In a lot of ways, that's very similar to Austin Romaine, but I think Austin Romaine has a tendency to sort of let himself get sucked into the trash a little bit more often, at least at his young age, whereas Daniel Green was less prone to that. And that's sort of what I see when I see Schilke, is he's going to be a plus run defending linebacker who is going to slot in pretty well on more run-based downs, So kind of like Johnny Hodgins for TCU, where he just ate people when it comes to tackles, but was I don't think Shoki will be as much of a liability as Johnny Hodges was in coverage, because despite what TCU fans say, yes, Johnny Hodges was a liability in coverage.
I didn't realize that was a controversial take to have. Actually, I thought that was just kind of a universal truth. But I guess more power to TCU fans for their delusions. But
Yeah, I like the Shoki pickup. It's one of those really solid additions that his floor is he's going to be a special teams contributor, and his ceiling is like starting level Big 12 linebacker.
yeah, I that's a pretty fair comp. If he becomes that, I'll be pretty happy with this pickup.
Yeah. But that leads us to, and it's really a shame that I declared Dalton Knapp my favorite commit of the cycle, and he gets to hold that title for exactly 1 week before someone overtakes it. And that is from someone who's currently unranked on on three, and that is JoJo Scott out of Lakeland, Florida. He's a 6'2", 165-pound corner, and you're gonna look at him and you're gonna say, "Oh, he's an unranked corner. Like, is he really that good?" Yes, he is. If you turn on his tape, it is legitimately 4-star tape, and I don't say that lightly. JoJo Scott has shot like himself way above everyone else on this commit list. And there's only like one name that I can think of off the top of my head that if he commits he would win. The other guy it's Lincoln Cure. Lincoln Cure would win, but I would entertain arguments for JoJo Scott being in the same stratosphere. That is how good he is, because he does the little things right while still having end game legit playmaking instincts and athleticism. There is absolutely no reason why he shouldn't be ranked. And just if he puts in a senior performance like he did in his junior tape, I will be legit mad if he's not a high 4-star.
I think that that's a completely fair take, and I tend to agree with it. I'm not quite ready to crown him my favorite because there's one other guy currently committed that I also really, really like. But it's not for JoJo Scott lacking anything. It's for this other guy who we're going to talk about in a minute, really being that good. But I think the big thing with JoJo Scott for me is I think that he is maybe the perfect archetype for what K-State has wanted in its cornerbacks. It's the type of guy we've been recruiting, which is 6 foot plus, crazy speed, with long arms. I mean, that's like your prototype corner that you're seeing pop up more and more nowadays. And JoJo Scott, I think, is the perfect example of that. And he's much more of a finished product than a lot of the other corners that we've taken have been. And that's not a slight to guys like Donovan McIntosh and Kenigel Thomas. That's JoJo Scott really flying under the radar right now as a really, really good prospect. He has a highlight in his huddle tape. It starts at like 2 minutes, 5 seconds, where he just makes this incredible, like diving last second deflection downfield at an angle that I genuinely didn't think was possible for him to defend given his position. But he has great instincts. His hip movement is really, really good for a high school junior. And just in general, honestly, he gets his hips turned around really quickly, and he's adept in that area. He has his instincts. I think I mentioned it already, but his instincts are just so good for being a high school corner. And he has really great open field athleticism the few times that we get to see it. He has a return highlight and a couple of pick sixes, and he moves really well in the open field. And he's a willing run stopper as well. I completely agree with you, Ace. I think this guy should be a 4-star. I love JoJo Scott. I think if he continues his current trajectory, I think he's an NFL corner. I really, really, really like JoJo Scott. And I understand why other corners at K-State has been chasing maybe see a JoJo Scott commit and choose to go elsewhere.
Yeah, I would see JoJo Scott committing, and if I had if I had any desire to play early, I would leave. There's absolutely no way. And you said it perfectly that JoJo Scott is the most polished corner commit that K-State has had from the high school ranks. Certainly since we've been doing the show. I have no idea who else competes like all time.
I wouldn't even know where to start with that, honestly.
But yeah, JoJo Scott is one of the rare high school corners that gets it. In a For want of better term, he understands that you're not going to be able to out athlete him, which that's a lot of what being a high school receiver is you're just going to out athlete people. You're not going to be able to do that with JoJo Scott, but he's also not going to bait himself into easy mistakes either. So he's so far along in his development as a corner right now that honestly, if he showed up on campus now, I would be wholly unsurprised if he was like, I'm going to be realistic. He would be he'd be on the lower end of this, but he'd be like a low end Big 12 starting corner. And I wouldn't feel bad about that projection. And he's he's going into his senior year. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen unless it's a high 4-star or a 5-star. JoJo Scott is different.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy, I think, at K-State, which I really like this class of guys and defensive backfield that we're putting together right now. I think JoJo Scott's the headliner right now.
Yeah. And you look at his offer sheet, and it's not a bad offer sheet either. He had an offer from KU, haha, losers, USF, Wisconsin, Georgia Tech. So he had some Power 5 interest, but as soon as K-State, he comes along, camps at K-State and said, yeah, I'm done. No, I want to be here, which I think is just a credit to Van Malone being a ridiculous recruiter.
Yeah, but no, he had a nice little stable of offers. He reported a Nebraska offer. He had a Wisconsin. Iowa State was after him. And again, we'll get back. We can always come back to if Iowa State offers a defensive player, that probably means they're good.
Mm-hmm.
NC State offered as well, West Virginia. So if NC State, again, that's another really great defensive school. So there's some indicators there that you can look to. And even Oregon State, they've kind of had a decent reputation with defensive backs these last few years. But nah, I can't really hammer it home more than I already have, but JoJo Scott is really a great, great player, and I'm super happy with the ad.
Yeah. And another great player that happened to commit to K-State over this past week, in fact, yesterday at the time of recording, is McGuire Richmond, the linebacker from Blue Valley, 6'2", 200 pounds. And this is another example of K-State identifying in-state talent and locking it down. So once again, Kleiman's sort of focus on making sure that a lot of the best players in Kansas don't leave is really bearing fruit. And of course, you're going to lose out on a few guys every year, like Babalola this year, Bram this year, and of course, the top guy always goes somewhere ridiculous. But McGuire Richmond is another legit pickup. I know, Connor, you really, really like McGuire Richmond.
I do. I'm a huge McGuire Richmond fan. For me, there's a couple reasons. The first one is that his explosiveness as a linebacker and play style reminds me a lot of Jake Clifton in high school. And we were both really big Jake Clifton huddle tape fans. We both thought that he could be a guy. We didn't think he'd, burn as bright as he did and then go away as fast as he did. But we were both huge Jake Clifton fans, and I'm a big McGuire Richmond fan as well. Again, we can also look other places for indicators of his talent level. He had an Iowa offer, which They've consistently been one of the uh, best defenses in the country the last several years. His brother Mason is a All Big Ten offensive lineman and is going to be in the NFL next year. And then he's at Iowa as well. Not only do we beat Iowa just from their defensive prowess, we also beat the family connection as well. He doesn't follow his brother, so that's another big change there. But Richmond's a really fluid player. I think he's going to be a Mike, and I think he, even if he doesn't become like some all NFL guy, I think he could be the type of Mike linebacker at K State that like leads some really salty defenses, like because we really do need like another Mike backer to step up. With Daniel Green being gone, we have a rental with Alec Marenko this year, but we're gonna need a new like alpha dog Mike linebacker to run the defense. And McGuire Richmond strikes me as somebody that could fill that void. He's also a two-way player in high school as well. He's a tight end, and he's kind of a bully. And that he also punts some, he kicks some field goals, he plays on kick coverage as well. He is very much a K-State recruit of old in the sense that he kind of feels like a Snyder guy, where he's doing a little bit of everything, and kind of fits the older culture of K-State. But Richmond, he's really instinctual, surprisingly good in pass coverage. I generally don't expect very much from high school linebackers in pass coverage, but his instincts were really great for a linebacker in particular in the pass game. He's good at sniffing out where a run is going, really good at not being fooled as well by either misdirection or by like a QB read. Like he's not following the dummy very often. He is really good at following the ball and sniffing out where the play is going. He's a really great prospect at linebacker, and it's telling that a school like Iowa wanted him, because I don't know what it is with the Iowa schools and their defensive talent evaluation abilities, but they do a really good job at picking out the cream of the crop. And McGuire Richmond, I think, is kind of a steal for K-State, honestly.
Yeah, and I like that you comp him to Jake Clifton, and I want to. I'm not going to say that I'm tempering expectations for that, because Jake Clifton, well, I kind of am. Jake Clifton was even better than we thought he would be.
Yeah.
He's what we thought Jake Clifton was when he first committed, which was a really, really solid, heady, and instinctual linebacker. And if McGuire Richmond is able to do what Jake Clifton did and put on, 20, 30 pounds, he could find playing time as a true freshman. Would I be as comfortable with it as I ended up being with Jake Clifton? Probably not. But again, that's because Clifton blew both of our expectations away. And this is very similar to what we thought Clifton was coming out of high school, which, like I said, instinctual plus run defender with plus athleticism. This does raise the question and the point of which of the two linebackers that are currently committed, where they going, or the three linebackers that are currently committed. Because it's, hang on, yeah, three, because I'm counting Schilke as a linebacker. So it's Polk, Schilke, and McGuire. I think Polk probably ends up at Will, McGuire probably a Mike, and Schilke at Sam. That's a full 3-3-5 linebacker room, and that's perfectly fine. Like that is a perfectly good linebacker room with a lot of upside all across it.
Yeah, that's where I would slot those guys right now as well. Polk is kind of the more slight of the three, so I think even if you just looked at them, I think frame wise, that's where you would put those three guys. But then you even look at the tape. I think Richmond, he just feels like a Mike backer. to me because they get the captain of the defense stereotype, and McGuire Richmond, he just feels like that when I'm watching his huddle tape. He just seems like the best guy on the field for the defense at any given point, and he just has a penchant for making big plays and big moments. And I think that that makes him an obvious Mike. Schilke's a great run or great pass rusher as well, given his power. So I think he fits well at Sam. And Polk is fairly rangy, and he's got long arms as well. So I think that puts him well at Will. I haven't watched this film in a while, and I've seen film of like 10 other guys since then. So I'll have to go back and watch Weston Polk film. But no, yeah, McGuire Richmond is competing with JoJo Scott for my favorite commit right now. It's I'd say fairly close. I maybe slightly lean JoJo Scott, but Richmond is up there.
Yeah. The final commit, at least of this week, is Dominic Mitchell, the safety out of Phoenix, Arizona. And he's another one. I don't think any of these guys were rated by On3 as of yet, which is okay. I mean, they'll end up, all of them will probably end up getting, they'll end up getting mid to high 3-star. McGuire's probably going to be a high 3-star. Schilke probably a middle tier 3-star. Mitchell's going to be a low 3. I've already made my opinions on JoJo Scott well known. But Dominic Mitchell is a bulldog. That's what he is. He's a jack safety. And he's very similar to Jack Fabris in that way. I think he's farther along than Jack Fabris. But I also don't think Dominic Mitchell goes on like 5-mile runs for fun. That's true about Jack Fabris, by the way. So I think that there's a lot to say about guys like Dominic Mitchell. But like I said, his prototype is bulldog. He's going to be the run defense jack safety, and he's going to hit you really damn hard. He's Josh Hayes. Jack Fabris, Josh Hayes, Dominic Mitchell, all three fit the archetype of that jack safety that comes downhill.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair comp. For the thing with him is that I really liked from his film is not necessarily that his top speed is incredible. It's fine. Like I'd imagine it's like in the 4.5 range, but he is one of those guys that hits top speed really fast. There's not much of a 0 to 60 time there for Dominic Mitchell. He accelerates quickly, and he's another guy that seems to display pretty good instincts. But what I like most about his film is that he can line up in several different places. He lines up in the slot some. He lines up some as like kind of like a almost linebacker, and then some as like a true safety, which that's a jack. That's a jack safety.
Yep.
And so that makes it pretty obvious what we see him as. And jack safety is a difficult position. So if he's already doing all of this at the high school level where he's lining up in several different places, that might give him a bit of a playbook advantage, or at the very least a bit of a mental advantage when he gets to K-State, because he's going to be used to having to line up in different places. So yeah, he's definitely on the lower end, I guess, these guys, which is a really good crop of recruits that we're going over today. But that's no fault of his. He really didn't have any offers to speak of, but he's another camp guy. And we've generally done pretty well with camp guys. I mean, when we are able to get eyes on a recruit, particularly, I feel pretty good about safeties that we recruit, because that's going through Klanderman and Kleiman, since both of those guys are former safeties, I think. Or Kleinerman's definitely the safeties coach, and Kleiman, I think, was the safeties. So
he was a safety.
Yeah, so we as a program, we're really good at picking out safety talent. So I have no qualms with taking Dominic Mitchell. I like his athletic profile. He's another guy that has a kind of prototypical size. He's 6'2", 200. And that's becoming a major theme with our defensive backs is tall DBs. We love to get taller guys in the defensive backfield. And that completely makes sense because that extra little bit of wingspan could be the difference between winning and losing a game at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a difference maker. And I feel bad for kind of having the least to say about Dominic Mitchell, but that's just because his archetype it's pretty. Whereas you had like McGuire Richmond, who had the Jake Clifton comp because he can do a little bit of everything. JoJo Scott was basically just me glazing for like 5 minutes. And Shoki has a unique skill set that he plays everywhere. Dominic Mitchell is pretty easy to figure out. He's a run stopping safety who's willing to do the dirty work that a lot of safeties aren't. That's him.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to what you said, really. Just, I guess the only other thing I'll say is this is another dip into Arizona for a prospect where it seems like we've kind of been revisiting that area a lot recently. Guys like Trey Spivey, Adrian Lara was from Arizona before he transferred. Ryan Davis is an Arizona guy as well. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting a couple others, but those were the big ones, at least off the top of my head.
Yeah, Arizona's been kind for at least one commit a year, and it's always someone that we've been pretty high on. So before we sign off here, I will say that the biggest visit of the year for K-State will be ongoing the day that this episode releases. And that is from Lincoln Cure, the tight end, the 5-star tight end from Goodland, Kansas. And it's not just a courtesy visit. No, there's legit noise there, and there has been legit noise for a year and a half.
I would say at least a year.
Yeah, and Avery Johnson is hosting him on the visit. So what I would say is stay tuned to both Twitter and KSO. There's the weekly KSO shout out, because if he commits, the only recruiting W that even remotely is in the same stratosphere as Avery Johnson. And I think Lincoln Cure is on paper the bigger commit.
On paper, I think that's without a doubt true. He is the bigger commit in terms of just pure recruiting rankings. Now, you can get into an analysis about positional value. Was Avery Johnson underappreciated? Yes. On 3 had him down in around 200 for national ranking, which is kind of nuts. But again, that's a pretty crazy conversation to be having at all. And because Lincoln Cure, he's earned every bit of that 5-star rating. If he ends up at K-State, I really, really hope we get a year of overlap where he is playing with Avery Johnson, because I think that that could be a pretty incredible matchup, or incredible pairing, I guess, to see on the field. But yeah, it's a massive, massive visit happening this weekend. And this recruiting bid here with Lincoln Cure seems to be permeating out a bit more into the fan base at large, because recruiting isn't something I think we often forget because we follow it so closely. Probably 90 to 95% of the fan base isn't really actively following K-State recruiting. They just show up and they are like, oh, this is a new running back. Okay. Or they'll read an article about it before the season starts, which there's nothing wrong with that, because sometimes most of the time following recruiting sucks and hurts.
Yeah, but it's exhausting.
The thing is that this recruitment, kind of like with Avery's, it's really starting to kind of flow over, I think, into other parts of the fan base where people are like, oh, we're hosting a 5-star, because, despite some of the great prospects K-State's had, in football, we've never had a 5-star commit, ever. And this could be an absolutely paradigm shifting get for K-State from the high school ranks. So it's a big weekend up at the Veneer football complex. I may drive by on Saturday and like send some good vibes or something. I don't know. Or maybe I'll go buy a Goodland shirt.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the first 5-star commit in K-State history, knock on wood, and then he has to pay the K-State tax and is knocked to a 2-star.
Unfortunately, that is on the horizon for Lincoln Cure, so we'll just have to make ourselves okay with that.
But yeah, it's not just him, but that's the only one that's been highly, highly publicized, because who would have guessed the 5-star is getting a lot of public attention. But it's a pretty good crop of visitors this weekend, just headlined by Cure. There are a few other Kansas kids that we're not going to dive into, but do you have any final thoughts on this crop of 4 that we just talked about?
Really happy with the ads. Hope that they get some actual recruiting rankings sometime soon to get the respect they deserve.
JoJo Scott is a 4-star, you cowards.
Yes.
But that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I am at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store or the supporters link, both in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe.